late summer, parts of the Central Valley begin to resemble a continuous industrial corridor rather than farmland. Convoys of tractors move along two-lane roads beside irrigation canals built decades earlier under massive federal water projects. Grain silos rise beside solar farms. Refrigerated trucks idle outside packing facilities through the night. Even the air changes depending on the crop cycle: sweet in vineyard regions, dusty during almond harvest, acidic near processing plants running tomatoes around the clock. The scale often hides how carefully calibrated the system actually is. California agriculture produces more than a third of the vegetables and a large share of the fruits and nuts consumed across the United States. That output depends on timing so precise that entire harvest windows can collapse after only a few days of extreme weather. Heat arriving too early can damage pollination. Unexpected rain near harvest can destroy crop quality. A labor shortage during peak picking periods can leave millions of dollars literally rotting in fields. This is why the machinery keeps growing larger, smarter, and more specialized. In cotton fields near Bakersfield, 6-row harvesters move methodically through acres that once required enormous seasonal crews. Modern cotton pickers no longer collect fiber into loose trailers the way older systems did. Many now compress harvested cotton into enormous wrapped modules directly inside the machine itself. The process looks almost surreal from a distance. Giant mechanical arms feeding raw cotton into onboard compression chambers before releasing perfectly shaped white blocks weighing several tons each. The economics behind that evolution are straightforward: fewer stops, less labor, faster transport, lower fuel waste. Everything is measured against efficiency because margins are constantly under pressure. And pressure comes from every direction. Water remains the defining issue beneath nearly every conversation about California farming. The state's agricultural empire was built through one of the largest water engineering systems ever attempted in North America. Reservoirs captured snowmelt from the Sierra Nevada. Aqueducts redirected water across hundreds of miles. Federal projects transformed semi-arid land into globally productive farmland. For decades, many growers operated under the assumption that expansion could continue almost indefinitely. Then the climate began shifting more aggressively. By the 2020s, drought cycles grew longer and less predictable. Groundwater pumping intensified during dry years, especially when surface water allocations were reduced. In some regions, wells had to be drilled deeper and deeper just to maintain orchard survival. Smaller farmers often struggled to afford those investments. Larger corporations usually could. Satellite imagery revealed entire sections of the valley floor physically sinking from groundwater depletion. Roads cracked, canals warped. Infrastructure built generations earlier began absorbing geological stress from overextraction below the surface. At the same time, agriculture remained economically indispensable to California. That contradiction shaped nearly every political battle surrounding farming in the state. Urban regions demanded water conservation. Environmental groups pushed for river restoration and ecosystem protection. Agricultural interests argued that reducing water access threatened food supply chains, rural employment, and national food security. The debate became less about simple right or wrong and more about competing systems trying to survive under increasing scarcity. Inside farm operations themselves, technology became a form of adaptation. Precision irrigation systems spread rapidly across large commercial farms. Drip lines replaced older flood irrigation methods in many regions. Moisture sensors buried underground monitored water usage almost constantly. Software platforms generated irrigation schedules based on weather forecasts, evapotranspiration models, and crop growth stages. Some farms reduced water use dramatically. Others simply used efficiency gains to maintain large-scale production under tighter restrictions. Either way, farming became increasingly data-driven. A modern farm manager in California might spend as much time looking at software dashboards as walking fields. Yield forecasts update in real time. GPS-guided tractors follow centimeter-level positioning systems. Autonomous weeders use machine vision to distinguish crops from invasive plants. Some dairy operations monitor individual cow health through wearable sensors, transmitting biometric data continuously. It is agriculture transformed into networked infrastructure. And nowhere is that transformation more visible than in California's dairy industry. The state became America's largest milk producer through operations operating at enormous scale. Some dairies manage thousands upon thousands of cattle simultaneously. Feed deliveries arrive non-stop. Automated milking systems run continuously. Waste management infrastructure resembles municipal engineering projects. From the outside, the facilities can feel almost overwhelming. Long rows of barns, feed mixers moving constantly, lagoons reflecting sunlight beside processing infrastructure. But dairy economics became increasingly unstable during the 2020s. Feed costs fluctuated heavily, labor remained difficult to secure, environmental regulations tightened around methane emissions and groundwater contamination. Consumer habits shifted toward plant-based alternatives in some markets, while global demand for cheese and powdered milk remained strong elsewhere. So large dairy operators adapted the same way other sectors of mega farming did, through scale and automation. Robotic milking systems reduced labor dependency. Methane digesters converted waste into energy. Advanced cooling systems attempted to protect cattle from rising temperatures during brutal California summers. Some facilities essentially became self-contained industrial ecosystems, balancing animal management, energy production, logistics, and environmental compliance simultaneously. The romantic image of farming had almost entirely separated from operational reality. And yet public perception often lagged behind. Many consumers still imagined farms primarily through small-scale imagery, red barns, tractors crossing modest fields, family operations passed through generations. Those farms still exist in parts of California, but the dominant agricultural engine of the state now functions closer to industrial manufacturing than traditional farming mythology. That shift changed labor itself. Seasonal migrant workers remain essential across many crops, especially delicate produce requiring hand harvesting. Strawberries, table grapes, lettuce, and certain orchard crops still depend heavily on human dexterity. Machines cannot easily replicate the judgment and care required for some harvesting tasks without damaging the product. But labor conditions became increasingly difficult. Housing shortages across California hit agricultural workers particularly hard. Many traveled long distances between affordable living areas and farming regions. Extreme heat events increased health risks in the fields. Wildfire smoke sometimes covered entire valleys during harvest periods, forcing workers to operate under hazardous air conditions simply to prevent catastrophic crop losses. Meanwhile, automation threatened portions of the same workforce agriculture still depended upon. The contradiction sat at the center of modern farming economics. Growers needed labor. Labor became harder to sustain. Technology reduced labor demand in some areas while increasing technical skill requirements in others. Mechanics, software technicians, equipment specialists, irrigation engineers, and logistics managers became increasingly valuable inside operations that once depended primarily on manual agricultural labor. California farming was not merely mechanizing. It was restructuring socially. Entire communities adapted around those changes. Rural schools introduced agricultural technology programs. Community colleges partnered with equipment manufacturers. Small towns increasingly depended on warehousing, logistics, and food processing infrastructure connected to mega farms nearby. Even land ownership patterns changed quietly. Institutional investors entered agriculture more aggressively during years of economic uncertainty. Farmland became attractive as a long-term asset tied to food production and water access. Pension funds, private equity groups, and multinational investment firms acquired enormous agricultural holdings across parts of the state. For some traditional farmers, the transformation felt inevitable. For others, it felt like the disappearance of an older California entirely. Especially because farming was never only about economics in the Central Valley. It shaped identity, migration, language, and political culture across generations. Dust Bowl migrants arrived during the Great Depression seeking work in California fields. Latino labor communities became deeply woven into the region's agricultural structure. Sikh farmers built major operations in parts of the valley over decades. Armenian, Portuguese, Japanese, and Chinese agricultural histories also shaped different regions across California farming long before automation dominated headlines. Modern mega farming sits on top of those layered histories. And beneath the technology, many of the old vulnerabilities remain unchanged. A late frost can still destroy orchards. Disease outbreaks still spread rapidly through livestock systems. International tariffs can still destabilize commodity prices almost overnight. A drought year can still decide whether some operations survive another season. The machinery creates an illusion of control, but agriculture has never been fully controllable. That reality becomes most visible during harvest itself. At night, under portable floodlights, giant machines continue moving through fields while temperatures finally begin to drop. Mechanics repair belts and hydraulic systems beside idling engines. Drivers coordinate loads over radios. Processing facilities glow against the darkness miles away. The system never fully stops because stopping is often too expensive. Millions of tons of food move through California every year under deadlines nature does not negotiate. Crops ripen when they ripen. Heat arrives when it arrives. Water either exists or it does not. And somewhere between the machinery, the algorithms, the labor crews, the investors, the drought maps, and the endless fields stretching toward the horizon, California farming in 2026 reveals what modern industrial agriculture has truly become. Not simply the act of growing food, but the constant management of risk on a scale so vast that entire landscapes, economies, and communities move in rhythm with the harvest.